Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man's Quarter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm finishing off where I left off in part one of In the Forest of the Far Land by Christine Morgan in the Bigfoot Terror Tales Volume 1 book. Now, I was skimming through the pages already, and I noticed that there was like a few more to go, like 3 or 4. And if I can't finish them up in this video, I might end up doing a part 3. So without further ado, let's continue on where I left off. He had died defending his home. He had died a warrior. I knelt and reached out, seeing the horse's head ring on my finger, and took Icewind from his grasp. A numbing calm replaced my panic. They had come in the night. Those who did this come in the night, while the folk sleep. Come and kill them. Not raided, not raped, not robbed. I saw untouched valuables and undisturbed food stores. I saw livestock that had been killed in their pens and byres. Even our faithful hounds had not escaped the carnage, but nothing had been plundered nor burned. Our 2 ships were, as they had been, drawn up on the logs on the shore of the sandy cove, where we kept them when not planning a voyage. Eventually, one by one, the others came to join me at the flat top stone the men had used for their Whiten meetings. They looked as I felt, their eyes bleak and hollow, their faces stunned, their color ashen. All dead, I asked, already knowing the answer. All dead, Fentress said. Murdered, said Ingolf. It was the Skraelings, said Fenborn. His voice raged. The cowardly bastard. Skraelings did this. Then we're all dead, demanded Fenris. Our fathers were warriors. Our fathers would have cut them down like stalks of grain. My father injured one, I said, showing them Icewind's blade. They must have taken the bodies of their own with them, Ingolf said. You told us they were peaceful, Gunther said to me. They were, I said. They murdered our folk. He clutched a silver bracelet I recognized as one his mother wore. There was blood crusted upon it. His lower lip trembled despite his size. He was close to crying. Why? Asked Thorkid, plaintive. Why attack us? Why attack us and take nothing? And how? That was Fentress again. With their stone flake knives and arrowheads, by treachery, Fenborn said with a snarl, they came slinking in the night like curs of vipers to destroy us all. I said, but they reckoned without us. We lived, we live. So, Thorkin looked up at me, his cheeks wet from tears, holding the pieces of his harp. What do we do? They all looked at me, expectant. In the end, we realized we could not bury them. There had been more than 50 men in our village, and their women and children, as well as some slaves. We could not dig so many graves, nor could we build a big enough pyre. It would have to be one of the ships. We spent the rest of that day, the longest and hardest day we had ever known, gathering corpses. It was grisly work and terrible. We carried them, we dragged them on sledges, we placed them in the belly of the large ship, which we called Sea Thunder, for the great sound her oars made when they struck the rough water. We put staves and cudgels with each man so he would not go weaponless. But we saved back their swords, their axes, their bronze-tipped spears. We put tooled toys and other grave goods into the ship as well. Then we stacked the Sea Thunder with firewood and roof thatching and pushed it down the rolled ramp of logs until it floated into the cove. The sun had nearly set by then, making the whole of the western sky blazed with its own flames of crimson, orange, and gold. We brought torches, lit the pyre, and set nothing at the tide, swept the burning ship out into the vastness of the sea. It's sad that they had to see all their villagers killed like that, but then it's also heart pounding that they had to pull all of them on one ship and send them out to sea to burn it into the ocean. But I know that these warriors are going to seek revenge on these Skraelings for doing that. If they see it, said Fentress, they will know they missed some of us and return to finish it. Let them come, Fenborn said. He heft an axe. Let them come and die. You want to fight them, Thorkin squeaked the words like a mouse. Vengeance, said Gunther, who now wore his mother's bracelet on his own wrist. We must have vengeance or die ourselves in pursuit of it. Ingolf said, We'll die anyway, left alone the six of us. We won't, we will, Wulfric. Thorkin looked to me again. We could survive a while, I said, sweeping an arm to encompass the empty village. We have the food stones, the shelter of our houses. We could even become farmers and fishermen. They made faces at that, and I did not blame them, for the words were sour on my tongue. But we have no livestock, and Fentress is right. Sooner or later they'll return. Even if they don't, added Ingolf, there's not much future for us here with one girl among the five of us. Fentress hit him. I'm glad she did, because they need to stop talking about all that one woman being in the group and not being so tough. She's tough. The four of us, I mean, he said, rubbing his arm where her fist had struck, since she is Fenborn's sister. Fentress hit him again, splitting his lip against his teeth and knocking him down. That's enough. I stepped between them, giving each a harsh glare. We're not here forever. Traders have visited before, and other ships. Yes, Thorkin nearly danced in his excitement. Other ships, or we have the Wolf's Jaw. We can go away from here. The Wolf's Jaw needs a crew of a dozen at least, I said. If we set out in her, we will drift until we starve or sink. And if we must die, said Ingolf, wiping the blood that had run into his sparse beard, better to die in battle as our fathers did. No one could disagree with him. We will not die tonight, I told them. We will arm ourselves and bring food and hide in the woods again, so we won't be found. Tomorrow in daylight, we'll decide what to do next. They did as I said. I found my father's mail coat, but it was large enough for two of me and heavy, so I did not wear it. His bright helm I did take, and the belt and scabbard that went with Icewind. Soon we were ready. We had food and weapons, and we buried a hoard of the most valuable items, gold and silver, amber and ivory, jewelry adorned with precious gems, deep beside the whitened stone. Then we went into the woods to hide with no fire and with each other, with each of us taking watches in turn while the rest slept. While the others slept, I did not. There seemed no sleep in me, even after all the day's grief and hard labors. Fentress sat with me when her own watch was done, and we listened to the wind in the trees and to Fenbor snoring. Finally, she spoke and asked me if I did think it had to be the Scraglins who done the slaughter. I shrugged. You're right about their stone knives and our fathers. How could they have done it? Spirit magic, she said. I loosened the breath I had been holding, and my shoulders slumped. You don't want it to be, she said. You like them, the Scraglings. I like them, I said, but if they did this, I will finish what my father started and kill as many of them as I can before I fall. You won't fall. You have us." She leaned over to press a quick kiss against my mouth, astonishing me so I could not put two words together. Then she was gone, back to her sleeping place. Thorkin, whose turn it was at watch, saw the kiss and grinned at me so widely I thought he popped like a pine knot in the fire. I made a show of scrubbing my hand across my lips, but in my secret heart I was delighted. Morning did come, though the sky was hazed and the sea was sullen. We returned to the edge of the woods to look out into the valley, finding it's a still dismal sight, with the corpses of our animals being fed upon by the gulls and more scavengers. There was no indication that anyone had gone back there during the night. We began a search for some sort of track or trail, despite knowing if it was Skraelings and they had traveled by their narrow boats, we would, of course, find none. But we did find tracks at the north end of the valley where a hill stream flowed into the river and the ground was soft and damp. Tracks, not the paw prints of a bear or wolf, not the hoof prints of a horse or deer, but foot tracks, long and five-toed, unshod tracks like any of us might have made going barefoot through the mud, except they must grow some big Skraelings, Thork had said after a few moments had passed, unease leading the trimmer to his voice. Some very big Skraelings, Fentress said, or giants, Finbor said. And this time nobody laughed. How could we laugh when the tracks here measured more than twice the size of any of our feet, even Gunther's? They sank deep, two drawing puddles from the wet earth. I turned to my friends, and once again they all looked to me, and for that, in that instant, I hated them. If I choose to abandon this and huddle and wait for the next visiting ship, they could do so, even with relief, and tell themselves they had only been following my lead. Any shame or cowardice or reluctance would be mine. The failure to avenge my father and mother and sister, ignoring my blood duty, would be mine. Men might excuse it and say I could hardly be blamed. I was a mere boy, no warrior yet, but it would hang over me for the rest of my days. A stain on my reputation, fear crawled over me. Like a host of living vermin between my skin and clothes, I shut my eyes, saw in the darkness behind them my father's dead gray flesh, and opened them again. "We go on," I said, touching Icewind's hilt. So we went on. The tracks laid us up the hill stream and into rougher country, where the brush was dense with brambles and the soil choked with stones. We found places where the bushes had been bent aside or forced apart. We found scraps of dark corpse hair clinging to the thorns. There was a lingering stink to the air, a musky, still reek that wrinkled our noses and churned our stomachs. Then we found a dead Skraeling. He was a boy, even younger than Thorkin, 10 or 11 at the most, and he had been broken like a child's doll made of twigs and twine. His body lay half in the stream, head first and face down, so that his raven black hair rippled in the water and his lifeless arms moved as if waving to us. He wore just a leather breechcloth and wrappings around his feet. The splintered remains of fish traps littered the stream's bank. We found the Skraeling camp next, or what was left of it. Their shelters of animal hides and long poles had been flattened, racks of drying meat smashed, baskets of nuts and berries overturned, more bodies, brown skinned and half naked, sprawn upon the dirt. Most of them had fought, but it had not saved them. Some wore head bands or cloth they had gotten from us, woven cloth dyed in bright colors, for which the Skraelings have a great fascination. Do you still think it was them? I asked Fenborn in a harsh whisper. He held his ask and shook his head, then pointed at more of the huge tracks stamped deep. Do you remember the story of old Nathaniel used to sing? Thorkin spoke suddenly, louder than he might have meant to, and startled us. The one of the king in the hall, and the monster and its mother. Ventress, kneeling beside a Skraeling girl of her own age, nodded. She had picked up the girl's knife and chipped a flake of stone with a handle, made an antler, tested its edge, and discovered it sharp enough to bring a head of blood to the pad of her thumb. And the hero, a shrill cry and a rustle interrupted her before she could finish. We all spun as something came crashing through the brush. Fenborn was the quick to bring up his axe quicker than I expected, but I was quicker still in staying his hand, for I saw it was a woman, a Skraeling woman, with a baby on her back. She wore a doe-skin dress fringed with beaded. Her black hair hung in braids over her shoulders. She was unarmed and frightened. Sobbing and babbling, she rushed at us. She threw herself against Gunther, who was closest and biggest. He twitched with shock but embraced her as he blushed. She was wide-hipped and very bosom and stared pleadingly at us for help. We calmed her, or Gunther and Thorkin calmed her. Gunther patted her shoulder uncertainly while Thorkin attempted to speak to her in what few words of their tongue he had learned while helping his father in trading. The rest of us stayed on our guard. She ran, and it happened. Ventress said, ran and hid and got away. How do you know? Ingolf asked. You can understand her. No, but she did. She ran to protect her baby. We looked at the baby, which looked back at us, nothing to be seen but dark owl eyes and a dark face framed by the rabbit fur that made up its carrying sling. What is she saying? I called to Thorkin. Was it giants? Asked Fenmore. He hushed us with an irritable flap of his hand and continued talking with the woman. Finally, he urged her to sit on the stump, and she did so, rocking her baby. I think her name is Nita Wolfson, he said. We blinked at him. Nita Wolfson, said the woman, touching her palm to her chest, and it was a hunt camp. He went on. They came to fish and hunt and gather food to take back to their settlement. But then they were attacked. So who attacked them? I asked. He just kept saying the same thing. Thorkin said, Sakachawata. What? Fenris furrowed her brow. Sakachawata. He uttered it slowly, clearly, but it still made no sense. Sakachawata, said the woman, bobbing her head. But what's that? Fenmore asked. A person, a name? None of us knew. Sakachawata. Nutta Wilson pointed at the dead and at the tracks. Then she snatched up a clump of coarse hair like the kind we had found stuck to a thorn bush and shook it in our faces. Sakachawata. A terrible roar shook the forest. Birds took flight, shrieking. We felt the ground shudder as if many horsemen were charging and heard the snapping of branches. Again, we spun toward the noise, and this time it was no frightened Skraeling woman. This time it could only be the Sakachawata, for they were like no other creature I ever seen or imagined. I counted 4 of them as they thundered towards us, but there were more than that. 8 or even 10 of them came bursting through the trees. My body seemed to turn to ice, as if the whole world froze in that instant. One I knew would be forever my memory, if I lived to have a memory. I'm going to stop it right there and do part 3 sometime next week, maybe. But I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more book reading content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap. And have a nice day.